Hello, and welcome from rainy New Jersey. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. Thank you all for being on time.
Hi,
Feel
everyone.
free to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Waxman. I'm going to be holding us in this sacred virtual space today. Feel free to rename yourself. This is my first shameless plug to take your cameras. Let me see face to face. Hi, Helen. Thanks so much. I completely understand if you have other things going on. Hi, Sipora. Hi, Hank. But this is going to be an interactive conversation. So panim, I'll panim face to face as much as we can is our vibe. But again, totally understand if you can't be present in your face as well today. And then let's get this party started before Rebecca holds us in a moment to start typing into the chat something that you are grateful for today. As Jewish people, we wake up in the morning and start with gratitude with our Moda Ani prayer. And so I like to start all of the classes just dropping into a little bit of gratitude to get our bodies and our hearts warmed up. Rebecca, I'll be quiet for a second and let you do more intros.
I love this. I'm going to put in, I have a very mundane, grateful gratitude moment for myself. And yeah, we'll give folks just maybe one more minute. I know a lot of people are still coming in, and then we'll get started. Thank you all. Moms are always great to be grateful for, and as is sunshine.
We didn't know to worry. So when the police knocked on our door at about 9 o'clock to tell us that Nana had overdosed on heroin.
Oh, I'm just gonna, invite folks to put things in the chat as we go, and we're gonna get started in just a few minutes.
Just want to acknowledge, I think we overheard someone's audiobook.
Yeah.
So it looks like a really important conversation, and acknowledge that we heard that, and to sort of put yourself on mute.
Great.
Grateful for laundry. Yes. And Hashem and Mom's sunshine. My students this morning who provided joy. Grateful to be planning a Seder with my family. Yes. Grateful for the day free of stress. Tzipora, where's the free of stress?
Ow.
There's not a lot going on today, so yeah.
Want to come over and hang out with you.
Like, that's a blessing. Great. I'm gonna folks will still keep coming in, but in the meantime, I am just going to get us started. Just a very quick introduction. So hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Missel, and I am the Partnerships and Operations Director here at Haggadot.com. And we are delighted to welcome Sarah Waxman today. We'll shift over to her in just a quick moment, but first, I want to just sort of give a quick overview to who Haggadot is. We are a platform that invites every Jew, regardless of their background, to find a place for themselves in the Passover story so that they may create more meaningful, personal, and connective Seders. When you come to our site and create your own Haggadah, it will look like this on your screen. You can mix and match images and text and some of the wonderful teachings from At the Well that we're going to get a little sneak peek of today. And you can make a Haggadah that really reflects you in this moment and your experiences that you want to get out of your Passover. And Haggadot.com is a project of custom and craft Jewish rituals. We are a design lab for the Jewish community, experimenting with technology, media, and video to imagine new formats for engaging with ancient traditions. We are powered today by the ROI community to be able to welcome Sarah. And I will also say that we are a 501c3, and we work a lot like public radio, in that we are generously supported by users like you. I don't have Ira Glass to call you, but I will say that, if you are able to support our work, it helps bring wonderful people like Sarah together with us. And with that, I am going to officially introduce Sarah. Sarah Waxman is the passionate founder of At the Well. She's been, I'm just going to invite folks to mute. There we go. Great. She has been a student of sociology and holistic medicine, a national champion athlete, an instructor of yoga and mindfulness, and a passionate member of the Jewish community. All these experiences gave her a deep understanding of the power that comes from being in a supportive community, feeling connected to your spirituality, and having a real understanding of the earth's cycles. At the Well connects women to body, soul, and communities by creating a worldwide network of well circles and resources rooted in ancient Jewish wisdom. At the Well inspires women to empower themselves, live whole lives, and lift each other up. And we are so excited to weave Sarah into this Haggadot.com spring webinar arc as we think about how our eating and Passover, which can sometimes be a fraught subject, can actually be really beautiful. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Sarah.
Everyone, thanks for being here. I'm looking forward to spending a little bit of time together doing one of my favorite things to do Jewishly, which is to prepare for the Seder. Not just assuming that I can just go to the Seder and drop in and be ready to go towards freedom and make this week intentional, but actually take the time and care to plan for it in advance. Especially folks who are taking on some leadership in their families and in their communities, just want to acknowledge your efforts and your work, and that you're a link in a chain. Passover is one of, if not the oldest ritual in the world. And it is an invitation for each of us to imagine that we have left Egypt and to move towards living a more free version of ourselves. As well as an invitation to translate this message in any way possible for every generation and for every person at the Seder to understand how this story might make an impact or imprint in our lives. It's also the beginning of the birth of the Jewish people. And so this story is packed with a lot. And if you're like me, some of the allotness might end up in some of the food that I eat. Both in terms of bringing joy and meaning and love, and also in terms of carrying some of the more challenging emotions that every human being has, and also the Jewish people have been carrying as a people for a long time. So that's sort of my prep talk for Passover, and I'm excited to be here with everyone. This is going to be a really interactive time. There's 20 people in this room. My style is a lot about discussion and getting this collective wisdom out. So just know that I'm going to invite that, and want to acknowledge folks who are like, I don't usually talk and I'm definitely not going to talk. We're going to want you to talk. And we learned that saying our prayers and speaking our tradition and speaking our thoughts, as Jewish people, we always speak our prayers out loud. Even the silent Amidah is spoken. And we get that from the biblical babe Hannah, or Hannah, who I'm sure everyone, we might even have a Hannah in the room with us. But everyone, we've inherited that. And so the importance of talking and being heard is certainly something very Jewish. So let's start by having everyone in the room go to the chat box and just type in why you came today. I really want to hear from everyone. And if you have a question that you know that you already have, please also type that into the chat so that I can make sure to prioritize answering that question. For me, Judaism, if I had to boil it down to one word, would be why. So I always love asking people some questions about what's arising for them. And we'll just take a moment to let all these answers come in, and let's look at them. I'm interested in what holistic eating for Passover is. Looking for new recipes. Leading the Seder for the first time and wanting for it to be meaningful yet interactive as possible. Shehechianu. because food is sacred and an important entry point for me as a new Jew. Shechianu. Love that. Susan says it's about food and eating, so why not? Need inspiration and motivation to do another year of Seders on Zoom. Yeah, totally get that. Anybody else doing their Seder on Zoom this year? Liza says yes. Yeah. I've always seen Passover as a time to eat mindfully, looking for more ideas around that. Yeah, Tzipora, I totally agree. Excited to hear some of your thoughts too. We can bring this collective wisdom together. Interested in seeing what you share, and I might add to your newly crafted family Haggadah. An inspiration. Sophie says, interested in learning more about adding food to the Seder plate. I know about adding ice cubes to the Seder to represent climate change. Amazing. Never heard that before. I love it. Getting educated in all things Pesach, particularly the food aspects. The past year, I've focused more on my health and what I consume, so I'm interested in learning more about the food of Pesach. I'm in need of spiritual connection. And Hank says, Passover has always been my favorite Jewish holiday, and I appreciate the opportunity to find new meaning that I can share with and my family at the Seder. Cool. Love all those shares and so glad to have everyone here. I just want to acknowledge that I might not have many new ideas for the Seder table. So for the person who said that, I don't want to let you down, but I'm just acknowledging that I might not. But Rebecca,
we can always share other things with that. I'll put some links in the chat as Sarah goes on. We can always do that.
And Haggadot.com is an amazing resource. Like it is a tradition that they didn't invent, but they're taking it forward into 5781 of helping folks create their own Haggadahs and taking rituals. And so just know that there's a ton of resources, including At the Wells resources that we'll talk a little bit about today on their website. And so it's there for all of us and for us to find out how we can make this year meaningful. This talk is going to be a little bit about focused on our relationship to food and how we might be able to use it as a pathway towards spirituality and also as a pathway towards ourself and towards our health. Because At the Well is a wellness organization, that's really our angle here. And the packet and the resources that we have is pretty lengthy, and there's a lot of really great access points to it. So I want to start by we're going to do a lot of journaling and reflection and hopefully hear from some folks, but I want to start with a simple question that might actually be complex, which is, what is your relationship between your food and your emotions? What is the relationship that you have between food and emotions? And feel free to write it in your own personal journal, or feel free to type some into the chat if you feel like sharing with the group. Liza, thanks for jumping in there. Would you be open to unmuting yourself and sharing a little bit about what you wrote?
Yes. I've always had trouble with my weight. I had reached a goal weight prior to pandemic, and unfortunately I am no longer at that goal weight. And I'm a healthcare provider who will be retiring at the end of this month because COVID has pushed me to the edge. I can't do it anymore. And I've managed to eat and drink my way through COVID. So, needless to say, when I'm stressed, I eat. When I'm nervous, I eat. When I'm anxious, I eat. So, Pesach is a stressful time. I eat.
Liza, thank you so much for that incredible share. I want to just first thank you for your service to humans this year in being a healthcare worker, and also the gift that you just gave all of us by sharing your story and who you are, and also saying something that's really true that I have a feeling is really resonate with a lot of people. So for those of you who have your cameras we can see your face. Let's give Liza just like a little bit of vibes for being awesome and actually role modeling, sharing something vulnerable which is definitely invited in Passover because of the individual responsibility that each of us have to leave Egypt and putting it in our own words. It's important for us to sort of speak from the I and from that experience. You're totally not alone. I've been an emotional stress eater for my whole life, and that's what drove me to actually do some of the work that I do for At the Well in general. So thanks for putting that out there. I want to invite another person to share out loud. Let's hear your voice. Any other person? It doesn't have to be the same, just your relationship between food and emotions.
I'll say something. I have to go make my granddaughter's lunch in a minute, but my emotions with food are tied mainly to my mom, because if I make certain recipes of hers, it just brings back such warm feelings of enjoying her food, watching her cook it, and memories of family. So emotionally, it just makes me feel good remembering her when I cook things that she made.
Amazing. Thank you, Barbara. Also, my grandmother was named Barbara, so I'm feeling a connection to my own grandmother with that share. One of my favorite rabbis to study is a man named Isaac Luria, medieval time commentary, and he talks a lot about the transmission of souls, and that actually we can be in a relationship with souls that have been on earth before us, on earth, souls that will come after us, and ones that are sort of in the same plane with us, like we all are together right now. And because we all left Sinai together, and because we're all wandering together, and because on Shavuot, every Jewish person and all the folks who are coming towards Judaism and friends of Judaism are receiving Torah at that moment, there's an invitation to transmit our souls to all of those folks. And I love, Barbara, your share about how food can actually be a way to make that really tangible and not necessarily just something that happens in your mind or putting your intention on it, but it can actually be something that goes into your body. So thanks for that. Would love one other. Threes always really land. Yeah, Helen.
Hi. So this year, my relationship with food changed a lot because with COVID, I was working remotely, and for a period of time had my mother and my daughter living with me. And for the first time, we baked challah together. So, and then my son came one of those times that we were all together and joined us. So it just became just like such a touching memory for me, because I don't know, when we will necessarily plan to do it again. That was a spontaneous thing. So definitely know about the stress eating, drinking, multiple jobs. I've been teaching remotely this year, so it's a totally different experience that intellectually I was up for and could do, had the skills and could do what I wanted, what they wanted of me. But in other areas, it just became so very much taxing and long and drawn out. So my new connection, I think, with food is my son has decided to be vegan. So I'm much more looking at, like, is this vegan? Is it not? Can my son eat it? Can he not? And he has corrected me many times recently and said, it's not that I can't, it's that I choose not to. He said, I'm making a conscious choice. I was like, wow, okay. Like it just spun the words differently for me.
Amazing. Thank you for that range of intentionality and joy that you're experiencing right now, even amongst a time like we're all living in, that's bringing up a lot and taxing us a lot and putting a lot of strain on us in ways that hopefully there's a light towards the end of the tunnel that we're close to, and that perhaps even some of the folks on this call will actually experience a little more liberation and freedom in this month of Nisan as vaccines continue to be available to us. So thanks everyone. Thanks for sort of taking that step to really think for a second about the relationship that we have with our food and our emotions. It certainly is an important conversation that we don't talk about that often in our society. I want to take it a little bit further and have you use that question as a base and now add on the layer of Passover. So what's your relationship to emotions, food, Passover, and sort of storytelling of this narrative of freedom? So let's pause for a moment and kind of journal about that. I'm going to type this question into the chat. And also I see a 310 number with the hand raised. So definitely jump in. Want to hear your question. I don't know who 310-903-3556 name, but you see that your hand's raised. So I want to.
Yeah, it's Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. My relationship to food has become, or has always been, my Egypt. And for me, this symbol of becoming free from that bondage is why I'm here. It's a terrible jail that I can't get out of.
Judy, thanks for sharing that. I think you're not alone. And acknowledging it is really powerful. I would love for you to, if you're open to it, can you share a little bit more about what you mean by your Egypt and bondage when it comes to this sort of what you said?
It controls me rather than I controlling it. And as I was listening to the other people, I related to all of them. And in particular, the woman who just spoke about making conscious choices for her son and his making a conscious choice. I make conscious choices about food every day, and then it goes to hell.
Yeah.
So that's the bondage. It's an addiction to food.
Thanks so much for sharing, Judy. I really resonate with that. Like I said before, my narrative to start at the well actually came from some of my own bondages of narrowness of food and my relationship to food, and that's just part of my journey. And I want to also acknowledge that there's other people here on this that's not necessarily their story, and that's okay too. We all, as humans, have things that we're in bondage, that we're in Egypt for. And actually, this invitation for all of us to leave Egypt is an invitation for us to all of us to leave the things that might be our quote unquote personal pharaohs, the things that are putting us and keeping us constricted. And so that is leading us into our next question, which is, please, for a moment, just acknowledge what are some things that might be your personal pharaohs. These could be limiting beliefs or thoughts. These could be things that are put on you right now that are making things really hard and tight and restricted. And I want us just to acknowledge right now what each of us as individuals might be feeling in your personal Egypt.
Want some soup, Poppy? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm going to put the question in the chat, and then we'll kind of debrief some of these answers together. I'm really curious what comes up for us, and knowing that there's no right or wrong, especially to this conversation, we're kind of just exploring this together. So what is your personal pharaoh? What is something that's keeping you in a narrow place? And for a lot of the folks on this call, I know that food can be that, but not for everyone. And there can be other things that are going on that we could commit to this year to being a little more free, which we're going to talk about. But I want to give everyone a second to be with that. So going back to that first question about our relationship to food and emotions and Passover and storytelling and collective memory. And I see Barbara has a share here about being born on Passover and linking it to her mother, which she had mentioned before about in her share. And I want to invite, Susan, go ahead.
Well, to the first question, I'm a Jew by choice, converted around age 40. And the Passover is more difficult for me than a lot of the other holidays because I don't have traditions to draw on. And I appreciate the ability to choose and make my own traditions. But, like at the first few Seders I went to, at age 40, I was the youngest child, quote unquote, and had to do the 4 questions. So I don't have the joyous childhood memories that a lot of people bring. And that's kind of a hard gap to fill.
Yet, you don't have those memories yet. I have a feeling 5 years from now, your Seder and Nisan are going to feel a little different. Thanks for sharing that. I think that's some of the joy of Haggadot.com. It's like it's there, and talking to folks and making connections with individuals. If that story resonated with you and you want to have a phone call with Susan, feel free to private message and build some connections here using digital space to chat. I love the opportunity to have each other hear each other and to help walk out of Egypt together. So thanks for sharing that memory, that experience with what you're going on with right now. Any other person want to sort of answer the questions that we've been presenting a little bit about your relationship to food and emotion? Yeah, go ahead. Kate, hi.
Hello. I joined the call a little bit late, but
welcome.
I'm already like, wow, this is perfect. I am so grateful for this call because I just realized that I am my Pharaoh when it comes to food. My journey with food is that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease and in and out of the hospital and on medication and all sorts of fun things, had surgery. And that food became the way that I could control my health. Food has been the tool that I've used to not be in and out of the hospital anymore, to not be on medications, to not it's so entwined with this idea of my freedom from disease, which is interesting when it's a chronic condition that you just go into remission to. So I don't know why I'm trying so hard to break free from it. But food, I already limit what I eat so drastically but I've done it in this way that has been about control, strictness, contraction. There are times where I can be really loving and nourishing with it, but that's what I realized is that food for me, and I don't know if anyone else relates to this part, that food actually is, food is nourishment. Food has the potential to be the midwife of the birthing from this narrow place, from Egypt, right? And so what if my relationship to food becomes my tool for freedom instead of the way that I interact? And that's the thing, it's not the food, it's of course the way that I perceive food or the way that I interact with food. And so how can food be that nourishment, I think I already said it. How can food help me birth into a layer of freedom?
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kate. If you resonate with something that Kate said and you're on camera, can you just give a wave or a thumbs so we can acknowledge that, yes, speaking some Torah and some truth out here. Curious if anybody has anything that came up for them that they want to share based on some of the thoughts we've heard from Kate and others in this sort of reflection point.
mean, I'd like to share because that really, really, really resonated with me a lot. Because, I have struggled with like mental health challenges, with a lot of anxiety and depression. And I, in and out of therapists and psychiatrists and this and that. And I really started to get very interested in nutrition for mental health and how food could be used skillfully in a way to build nutrients and cultivate a sense of well-being and um, found a really good mentor to learn with. And I myself am a mental health counselor. I'm a licensed therapist, and it just became such a rich tool for improving health. And like, I really resonate with the idea of love and nourishment. And this food is, look at all of the nutrients in this food and the vibrance and the prana that's in this food and the life force and how it's nourishing me versus other kinds of foods that can be really depleting and cause a lot of digestive issues, which contribute to anxiety and depression and all of that. So it's become a really interesting process for me to really learn how to use food as my ally versus my enemy, and as medicine. So yeah, that's why it's just really resonated with me, Kate. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks, Sephora, for that. What comes up for me when I hear this is actually matzah. Matzah is the bread of affliction and the bread of freedom. And it actually holds both of those things. And how could that be? How could that be something that holds both of those polarities? Well, I think Judaism offers us a lot of opportunities to live in the gray, to live in the space where it's not so clear, but it's holding all of it. And it goes a little bit to the concept of shlemut, or wholeness, which is a very Jewish thing, that we're not actually striving for happiness, we're striving for wholeness. And wholeness can mean both the broken parts and the complete parts, which was also reflected in the Torah portion last week or the week before. I think it was last week, that in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, we carry the broken tablets and the complete tablets and wandered 40 years with them. Why would we carry 40 years of tablets that were smashed? Well, because we're holding our brokenness too, and that actually is part of our wholeness. And that matzah actually can be that piece of ritual object that has been part of this telling of this story of recognizing that we're moving from a narrow place to a freedom place, acknowledging the narrow place and moving towards that collective freedom together. So I don't recommend eating matzah all week because I think it might not necessarily feel the best for us. But if you're looking to be more constricted, feel free. But if you're looking to really use it as that ritual, then do as commanded, which is to eat it on the Seders, and perhaps consider not eating it all week. Eat the seasonal foods that are invited to us, and look to the Seder plate to get inspiration for the other types of things that is designed for our bodies. So you're like, if you're like, how am I going to remember all this? Just know that it's all written down for you. I'm going to put into the chat this resource, and Rebecca will also put the link that's on the haggadot.com page. No need to open it now, but just know that this was actually a resource that I made probably 7 years ago, even before I started at the Well, because I was in holistic nutrition school. And I went there for my own self because of, like I've said before, sort of my own battle with food and it being my Egypt or my personal Pharaoh, and also being a place of joy and connection and a way to be connected to my grandparents, and having it just be like a complicated relationship, that I went to holistic nutrition school and tried to learn a little bit about it. And in my studies, that's where I started coming towards my Judaism, where for me, as an Ashkenazi person born to, I think forever, we did this, the 23andMe test where we're like almost 100% Jewish by ethnicity forever. that actually Judaism isn't just my religion, which I believe everyone chooses to do if you're practicing, whether or not you were born into the family or not, but it actually just became part of like my health, that it was something that I had inherited, and that these stories and these rituals meant something to me and I needed to explore it. And that the rituals and the food actually represented something really important. And when I spoke to my friends who are not Jewish or converted to Judaism about some of this, it brought that same level of connection about, actually I'm accessing my Judaism through these ritual objects. And for the week of Passover, those ritual objects actually are food. And so how might that food and that spirituality and that story of Passover be impacting my health of my body? And vice versa, how might the health of my body be impacting my ability to feel connected to God or connected to spirituality and others? So thinking about rituals and thinking about spirituality, and in the context of thinking about health, is how I started thinking about Passover, and what this month and what this holiday really invites us to do, which is that in the springtime, we move from being narrow to being free, that we commit to 1 week of intentionality. It is not supposed to be easy, but it is supposed to be meaningful. And thinking about how we might be able to place our intentionality on something that we're committed to doing as individuals and as collectives together for this week. So I want to take a pause for a second and just like allow some of the stories and some of the words that we've heard in this call and some of the reflections that each of you have done to just like settle for a second. We've been very heady and talking, and I think it's been bringing up also a lot of emotions in our hearts and souls. So let's get to a place of feeling held and supported by the one and only eternal oneness of the world, also known as God. And if God language is triggering to you, think of spirit or the divine. But I have a feeling that it's sort of a thing on this call for folks to attempt at feeling into that interconnected oneness that we're all part of. And for me, that can be an incredibly important place to root into when I feel stuck or burdened by my own personal pharaohs. If I'm feeling limited, then I can turn towards the fact that my body is created in the image of God, in the image of the divine, and that it is my responsibility to be in relationship with God towards my health. If I'm wondering about where to find God, I can look no further than my own body. And so I want to invite us for a couple of moments to bring God into our bodies together. And the way that we are going to do that, can you all see my screen? Can you see the Yud He Vav He? Okay, Helen's shaking her head, so I know yes. All right, so this is one of the 72 names of God. None of them actually are the sounds of the defined God. They're all different ways of talking about the attributes of God. And this is one of them, Yud He Vav He. And this translation of Yud He Vav He actually means to become, to be, to bring into being, is what the actual translation of this, of Yud He Vav He means. And as you can see, it is written in an untraditional way, not right to left, but actually top down. Does anybody see anything in here in this way that it's written? Anybody out there? Okay. It looks like a person, hopefully. A little stick figure. We have the head here at the Yud. We have the He down the arms here. We have the Vav here as a torso. And we have the He here as your legs. And so what I'm going to teach us right now is an invitation to take God into our bodies and allow ourselves to feel that connection of our divinity inside of ourselves, knowing that we need to look no further than our breath and our body to find that source of support, to help us move into the freedom that God helped the Israelites make happen. So the way that it works is it's an inhale from your throat to the top of your head, inhaling Yud. Exhale, Hey, down your arms and all the way through your fingertips. Inhale, Vav, from your torso up to your neck. And then exhale, Hey, all the way down your legs through your toes. And I'm going to invite us to do a little bit now. If you're noticing, I don't want to do this, or judging it, or I can't do this already, just allow that to be something that's going on and overcome it with me. Let's really try this together. I used to do this meditation when I was in traffic or in a fight with someone, and it's a really universal way of just grounding. Feel free to allow your eyes to close. So you close a sense door and it can allow yourself to feel, or just make your eyes soft. And then get going. Inhaling Yud. Exhale, Hey. Inhale, Vav. Exhale, Hey. And then continuing. Yud. Hey. Vav. Hey. And do a couple rounds on your own beat. If you notice your mind wandering somewhere else, that's amazing. You're human. Your mind's doing what it's supposed to, thinking. Just bring it back to your breath, bring it back to your body, bring it back to God. A reminder that shoulders are not earrings. See if you can use your Hey to really relax. We'll do one more on your own. And when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Maybe consider turning the corners of your mouth up to the sky. I would love to hear from you all about what that felt like, knowing that there's not a right or wrong answer at all. Just curious what the felt sense was. Feel free to type it into the chat, or let's hear your voice. Genevieve says, tingly. Would you like to share a little bit?
Yeah, like I guess at first it was very tingly, but it really like evened out and made me feel a little bit more expansive as I went on.
Thanks for sharing. Any other person want to share their voice, their experience with the God body meditation?
It was opening and relaxing.
Thanks so much, Liza. And I see we have some chats in here from Judy and Susan. The reason that I invited us to do this was, first of all, to just settle and allow everything that we said to be true and also whole, and also to invite in a really easy, very quick, you don't even need to tell people you're doing it, way to find that expansiveness, like Genevieve said, that relaxation or that openness, like Liza said, and something that can be easy that you just keep starting again, like Susan says in the chat. And so if you find yourself in a moment of constriction in this Passover, which by definition is retelling of a very hard and challenging story, and using food to help us feel into it. We literally eat bitter herbs. We literally eat salt water. And we're spending a lot of time thinking about the past. It can bring up a lot of emotions. And so if you find yourself needing an opportunity to feel more expansive, then the breath is there for you, and it's something that you can do. It might not be easy, and it might require you to take a little bit of courage, but that certainly was what was true also for the Israelites. You know, they had been in slavery. They were living. Their life was as is. And then Moses came and gave them another alternative, but they didn't know what freedom was or what freedom felt like. So it actually was an act of great courage to step towards an unknown, to step towards the hope and belief that there could be something else. And so it was an act of courage. And that's what I think this week is inviting us all to do, is to notice our personal pharaohs, acknowledge the tightness and the constriction, let that just be a human feeling, and then find the things that we can commit to in order to live a more free life. And so I want us all for a moment to think for a second about what are the things that you could do in order to live a more free life, a more free version of yourself. The question is, what are some things you could do to live a more free version of yourself? And there's no right answer to this. This is a very particular thing to each person. I think we hear some background noise. Thanks. Okay, great. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, I think that this is actually something for me to kind of sit with and live into, because I'm really a planner, and that often helps me by, you know, being prepared and like doing things ahead of time. But I find myself thinking about right now, like how the Israelites just like picked up and left and like didn't have time to let their bread rise. And, you know, like they just, that was what they had. That was what they had to do. And that was how they became free. And it's like, that's a counterintuitive thing for me to do. And so, you know, I just want to kind of like hold that tension.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. The Israelites did that, and then retroactively in the Torah, God commanded each of us for every generation to eat matzah on this. So the Israelites were the ones who were intuitive, and we're the ones who are now being commanded in this kind of way to bring it forward. So thanks for that reflection. We're not going to necessarily go around and hear each person's acknowledgement of what they could be doing to live a more free version of themselves, but I did want to give you all an opportunity to just think for a second, or even a good prompt to sit down at your Seder and think about as you're hearing the story of this liberation, and think about how you might be able to take that on as an individual, and really think about how that might be true for you in 5781. In the version of the story for what it's like for each of us in this moment. each part of the Seder plate has a different food, right? So we know that we have the bitter herb, and we know that we have maror, and we know that we have charoset, and we have many different things throughout Passover that we're eating that are symbols for a different narrative. And so the resources that At the Well has put together is like really looking at the shank bone and talking about what the shank bone represents. And then we actually take it from a different perspective, and we look at what the benefits from a health perspective that, you know, a chicken bone might be for our bodies. And in our resources, we put a ton of questions that might help you link about the relationship between the ritual object and the meaning for that thing, and then what it might tie into in terms of our health. At the bottom of each of those pages, there is a recipe. So for the person that came that wanted more recipes, here are some recipes for you. As I said, hopefully I could get to everyone. But as we start thinking about closing our time together, I want us to have one more question, which is to think about what it would feel like in your body to be the freest version of yourself. What it would feel like in your body, and actually let me expand it to your soul, to be the freest version of yourself. We'll just give a couple moments of just all of us doing our individual reflection together. Liza's putting in the chat that this would be the most amazing and relaxing way to be. I want to acknowledge that each of us deserve that. It's part of our humanity, and Passover is here as a marking of time in the calendar to help us see the things that might be constricting us, ritualize that story, acknowledge that it will take courage and work in order to get there, and then commit to a week of working towards that freedom. And it happens every spring, and we each do it, and we all do it together. We don't just clean our bodies when it comes to Passover. I mean, we're supposed to eat food that's of this time, seasonal food, which is spring food, which by nature and by design is all about cleansing. I mean, we all know that like there's like fads of juice cleanses in the spring, or that you have a spring cleaning is like something very secular in our culture. But actually that's just part of Passover. You're supposed to clean your house before it starts. You're supposed to burn or sell off all the chametz, all the pieces of bread. But for us, in terms of ritual meaning, it's actually all the gunk that's keeping us back from our opportunity for freedom. So I invite you to prepare your houses, just like you're going to prepare your food and you're going to prepare your mind in order to be walking towards that collective freedom. I want to pause for any questions that folks might have about this teaching or for me in general. I'm going to look back to see if I got everyone's answers. Sacred and important entry point. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time and your presence today and for exploring Passover in a creative, sort of holistic way.
Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I'll let you finish and then I put a couple extra resources in the chat that I'll share about.
I was just going to say, feel free to be in touch or, at the wells here, as well as haggadot.com for both Jewish wellness with us and also resources to make Passover as meaningful as possible for you and your families this year. So thanks so much. And Rebecca, passing it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you everybody who joined us today. I know I'm coming out of this just feeling differently than I was when I started, which is always the goal with Passover. So Sarah shared here the link for At the Well. I also put in the chat for people who are interested in more of like a nitty gritty, granular, how do I do the Seder question. I put in a recording of our recent blog post about how to host our recent webinar about how to host a Passover Seder this year. There's also rituals for vulnerability and bringing our whole selves to the Passover table in there. So I hope you'll take a listen and watch that. There's also a meditation guide for Passover that actually, it's so funny because we did not talk about this in advance, but part of it is about releasing your inner pharaohs from meditation leader Allison Lecter, and some beautiful illustrations. So have a look at that as well if you'd like. And then of course, yes, to please find At the Well. We'll share their page as well with the recording of this webinar for everyone who registered. So thank you so much. And also just happy Passover, everyone.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget the joyous part of this, the freedom, the opportunity to be new and to bring this time of spring into our life.
Amen.
Thanks, everyone. Have great days.